Hola, mi amigos. And that is the full extent of my Spanish. Happy Friday. We finally made it through to the weekend, and what better way to start it than with some new space stock updates. I haven't made one of these for about 3 weeks, and there's been a ton of news lately, so I just wanted to get everyone caught up on all the various bits of news happening around the space industry, specifically for investors with an eye towards publicly traded companies, although some of those private ones do make waves, and we do cover some of the news around them as well. So today for you, I have news around Rocket Lab, Blue Origin, Terran Orbital, ULA, and a ton of others. Let's get to it. By the way, I hope you don't mind the unblurred background today. A viewer was mentioning in the last video that he actually doesn't like the blur effect, so you are instead treated to my sometimes messy real background. Let me know down in the comments which one you prefer. I can change it either way. My fiance always makes a mess and doesn't clean it up, so it's tough, you know.
That's also true.
Before we dive into the news, I hope you'll consider hitting like and subscribe. It'll really help out the channel. Every subscriber very much appreciated. With that out of the way, let's dive into this week's space stock updates. Starting off with the overall markets today, it has been a pretty tough week. We've seen several 2+% down days on the NASDAQ over the last week. Looking at a month chart, we have gone from 13,660 all the way down to 12,643. So definitely past few weeks have been a rough time for any sort of growth company, and especially including several space companies that we do like to cover. Taking a look at the ARC-X ETF that holds a lot of space companies, they similarly had a pretty bad run lately, going from 15 all the way down to 1265, so even an underperformance compared to that NASDAQ. And then just zooming in even further to some of the companies that we all know and love. I know this chart kind of seems like a lot. There's a lot going on. Basically, we can see here that we've had a strong underperformance from AST Space Mobile over the past month, as well as Lunar, or aka Intuitive Machines. That stock has been hammered really hard as of late. Rocket Lab had a rough time due to their recent anomaly issues, although they did kind of bounce back nicely now that they do have permission to resume launching from LC1. Planet Labs still being hammered as well, dropping a lot lately, and SPC also being hit hard. Obviously, one of the ones doing the best, MDA, which is a profitable company, trading at a reasonable price to earnings, which puts it at an advantage in times like this compared to some of these other up-and-coming growth companies that have not yet made a profit. First up, we do have a shareholder letter from Virgin Galactic. So this was written by shareholders to Virgin Galactic's management, the shareholders being very concerned about how the company is being run. This open letter was signed by more than 600 people and has urged suborbital flight provider Virgin Galactic to reduce spending and to lay off employees in order to conserve cash and raise the company's low share price. This is something I would wholeheartedly agree with. I know it's always tough to lay off employees, but the amount of spending going on in Virgin Galactic really, since they came public, has been absolutely wild to me. The letter was predominantly written by Andy Shovel, a London-based investor and Virgin Galactic shareholder, signed by 646 people as of when this article was published. The letter says, "We would submit the challenge while the company is 2 to 3 years away from weekly space flights. Does it need 1,100 staff? Are all those staff members absolutely fundamental to the business needs in the near term, while the annual revenue ceiling is under 15 million and only one spaceship is being operated?" So I very much agree with the tone of this letter. I do think Virgin is spending way too much money and they're going to get themselves in trouble. The share price is starting to get very close to that $1 floor that, if you pass below it, you have to worry about delisting, have to start looking at reverse splits and stuff like that. Something Astra shareholders and Terran Orbital shareholders are extremely familiar with, and definitely Virgin Galactic shareholders do not want to have to deal with. Although I do have to say one thing is I never would have invested in Virgin Galactic in the first place, so I really wouldn't be one of the signees. But if I were a shareholder, I would definitely agree with the tone of this letter. And then a strange comments made by CEO of United Launch Alliance, Tori Bruno, obviously ULA working on the Vulcan rocket, trying to get it to launch by the end of the year. I think more likely early next year, but we'll have to wait and see on that. He did say that while he did not disclose details of any negotiations about a potential sale of ULA, he said that the launch operator is primed for a buyer. Quote, if I were buying a space business, I'd go look at ULA. It's already had all the hard work done through the transformation. You're not buying a Victorian with bad plumbing. It's all been done. You're coming in at the end of the remodel so you can focus on your future. So yeah, really shocking for a CEO of his own company to say that his business would be a good company to buy. Anyway, Ars Technica did first report the possibility that ULA would be sold back in March. At the time, sources said most likely it was going to be sold by the end of the year. This set off a huge wave of speculation. Obviously, ULA being a joint partnership between Boeing and Lockheed Martin. Some speculation that maybe Lockheed Martin would take over the whole business, or maybe another player would come in. ULA valued, I believe, around $5 billion. So not a massive business and should be digestible for some really big companies out there, but they have had an outsized impact on the launch industry, especially when it comes to defense and government launch, for basically as long as I can remember. However, I do think having a rocket come online in 2024 or 2025 that is not reusable, at least the first stage from the get-go, is a pretty big red flag to me. I know they do have plans for the smart engine reuse down the line, but that's not a full first stage, and I just don't see how you compete in the modern rocket environment without reusability. Yeah, definitely. I don't know if I would be looking at it to buy if I was someone out there with that kind of money. And then Boeing just really coming out and saying that they can't make money on fixed price contracts, which is kind of a newer thing. Obviously, in the past, there's been these, kind of get paid what you spend type contracts, and Boeing has been a big beneficiary of them in the past. The government trying to move to fixed price to control costs and kind of get a better deal on some of these contracts is really not working out well for Boeing, although SpaceX does seem to be handling that structure much better. So maybe it's not only the type of contract that is at fault here. And Boeing did just report their quarterly results recently. Their financials continued to be dragged down by their defense, space, and security division. This division includes missile production for the military and space activities such as satellites and the Starliner spacecraft that, as we all know, been a bit of a dumpster fire, lost $1.7 billion in the first 3 quarters. So at least, to my mind, Boeing's failure to deliver Starliner on time and on budget is hurting them, as I think it should be, whereas before, all those costs would have just been passed right through to NASA. Notably, the CEO and CFO pair pinned the blame for this poor performance by its defense and space division on fixed price contracts. As they try to return to profitability, they will not be using fixed price contracts anymore. I have been persuaded recently by a few people online that maybe cost plus contracts that Boeing likes to do aren't the devil, and SpaceX could have performed just as well under that kind of a structure. And it remains to be seen if the agency is really interested in giving out many more cost plus contracts in the future. So that is something we'll have to watch for with Boeing going forward. Northrop Grumman, another big old school space company, also did release their quarterly results recently. They did have a bit of a tumble afterwards, so it looks like the market's not too favorably looking at these results. Obviously, they are still profitable. They're not in any danger of going out of business. But if you do want to check out the full results, you can check out Boeing's investor you can check out Northrop Grumman's investor relations webpage. Okay, now on to some more exciting news. Firefly is looking to get closer to launching yet again their Alpha rocket after that first successful mission for the U.S. Air Force, Victus Nox, did prove out the vehicle. Some interesting comments on Twitter talking about the mission may be no earlier than March of 2024. Alpha, at least according to nextspaceflight.com, has 1/3 the manifest of Electron, and they have 3 times the capacity of Electron. Both do fall under that small launch vehicle category, so we finally do have some competition in the space. Let's see how things shake out between the two. Looks like the gloves are going to come off. I do kind of question the, larger small launcher, how much market there is for, say, a 1-ton vehicle, but Firefly is going to prove it out over the next few years. We're going to see. So definitely interesting to see how that will shape up, and I will be watching for this next launch in March of 2024. Intuitive Machines, aka Lunar, as we saw in that previous chart, has been absolutely cratering lately. They've finally given in to the what I like to call post-SPAC hangover. And really, if you're any space company that's private these days, I don't know why you would even consider going SPAC. I really think they kind of just missed the time to do a SPAC. Investors are not nearly as optimistic about them. They didn't raise nearly as much money as they wanted, and always these SPACs just seem to crash right after. Intuitive Machines being no different. So Canaccord did note in a press release recently that they think a successful launch for Intuitive's Nova C lander going to the moon could be the next catalyst for the stock. This Nova C lander representing 10% of the total revenue recognized from the IM-1 mission from NASA. And we did just get some news just hot off the presses about when this could launch. The IM-1 launch has been rescheduled for a window that opens January 12th. So this could potentially be, the first American lander to land on the moon in quite some time, and it will be a commercial lander as well. There have been a lot of failures recently with different landers. I'm sure we've all seen the ISRO one, Russia's, and several others. So this will be exciting to watch, and really hoping that it does land successfully, and maybe that could be a catalyst for the stock to bounce back a little bit. Rocket Lab, as we all know, they did have that investigation into that anomaly recently, and I made a video about the fact that they have received permission from the FAA to return to launch in pretty much record time for the company. Peter Beck just providing a little bit more color on it, saying that they have worked around the clock for weeks to figure out the deeply complex and elusive issue. I'm very curious to find out more about what this issue is. Hopefully we'll get more info maybe in that earnings call early November. He did continue on, though, saying that I'm very happy with the corrective measures and we will be back on the pad soon. So the company officially said they will launch by the end of the year, hopefully much sooner than that, because any Rocket Lab shareholders really want to squeeze in as many launches in Q4 as possible. And I do think, by the way, the quarterly results coming up will be very illuminating, because obviously they'll provide guidance for Q4, and that really should tell us how many launches they expect to have in the quarter. And then ABL Space kind of sneakily here getting ready to launch from Alaska for the second time. Their first launch of the RS-1 rocket was quite a while ago. It was a failure. The rocket had power problems about 10 seconds after ignition, I believe. And finally, after many upgrades, they're getting ready to launch again. This is a private company, not a public one you can invest in, but obviously any new launcher in the space can have ramifications for Rocket Lab and the others who are publicly traded, so it is interesting to follow. So both the RS-1 rocket and the GSO system, the land system, have had upgrades since the inaugural launch failure from Kodiak Island in Alaska. And there's actually quite a thorough write-up, quite interesting here on Substack if you want to check it out, from Harry O'Hanley, talking about the upgrades that have been made and kind of the road that's brought them to this launch. It's been quite a long one, a lot longer than maybe some people expected. So, just highlighting a few things here. I think the whole thing is an interesting read, talking about the investigation and all the rest. But for the sake of brevity, we're just going to point out that for the Block 2 version of the RS-1, which is what they'll be launching soon, they are having 20% higher thrust, 20% more propellant, detachable stage 1 aft module, modular stage 1 engines, and a lightweight stage 1 tank. So a lot of upgrades for this new block version of the RS-1 engine. Going to be interesting to see it launch, and whether, with this more propellant and more thrust, perhaps it'll have more payload capacity as well. And just a look at Terran Orbital next, because there's been all sorts of news coming out about this company over the past week. You can see the stock price not performing well. Below $1 means they're in danger of delisting, so they've got to do something. Really crashing over the past year. And if you zoom out even further, from $10 to 83 cents, really not looking good, obviously. So the company held a town hall recently with the CEO trying to right the ship, talk about the things that are going right, reassure shareholders, and kind of talk about the plan. Before we get to that, though, they did receive a big contract from Lockheed Martin to build 36 satellite buses for the SDA, Space Development Agency, Tranche 2, Transport Layer, Beta Constellation. So that's a pretty big contract for them. 36 large satellite buses, definitely pretty major. However, Lockheed Martin is an investor in Terran Orbital, so a lot of people did seem to expect this to happen. So it's not really that shocking or exciting, but the stock did move a little bit after this announcement. I always do find it funny when a company that's, invested in Terran Orbital is awarding them contracts. A little odd there, but it's kind of like in their own interest, I guess. And then on to the town hall where the CEO was talking to investors. The big news is that they are lowering revenue guidance following delays on payment from Rivada Space, a customer for their other big constellation build-out. However, they do say they're still expecting to receive $180 million later this year under that giant $2.4 billion constellation contract. Rivada is a bit of a question mark, though. A lot of people don't know too much about it. We do have some information down here. It's a private company that likes to keep a private profile, and their money has been affiliated with a large sovereign that has not yet publicly announced their support for the project. A lot of speculation here that this might be some kind of a sovereign nation, maybe Middle East, the Saudis or something like that, backing the project. We can't really know for sure, but it is interesting and very secretive, although you would wonder, why are they late on the payments if they're being backed by the Saudis or someone like that. CEO also did say that the company is currently pursuing 80 opportunities, which comprise more than 2,800 satellite buses across 40 different customers, collectively valued at $2.7 billion. So that's a lot of different opportunities they're pursuing, but I'm sure there's a lot of other companies in play there, maybe the likes of a Rocket Lab and MDA, or there's a lot of people working on building out satellite constellations. He also said that Terran Orbital remains on track to record positive EBITDA next year and currently has more than $70 million of cash on hand. They recently raised capital because they were starting to run low, and they did get paid a bit for other contracts, so they do say that they're going to be able to make it with that $70 million to profitability, although that's the kind of thing every company seems to say, even the ones that don't end up making it. So have to wait and see on that. Obviously, the stock price not looking good, and a reverse split would be very much on the table for the company. Then some interesting news from Blue Origin. So we've heard a lot about their Orbital Reef space station that they plan to work with Sierra Nevada and some others. It would be a commercial space station, but a lot of rumors suggest that this project is looking less and less likely to happen. Sierra Nevada apparently not as interested as they used to be. Blue Origin has now updated the landing page of their website, deleting mention of the Orbital Reef. And by the way, this Space Docs Twitter account is a pretty good follow as well if you're interested. Also from Blue Origin, they have unveiled a Blue Ring spacecraft platform focused on providing in-space logistics and delivery. I really didn't see this one coming, but Blue Origin does like to surprise us. The platform provides end-to-end services that span hosting, transportation, refueling, data relay, logistics, including an in-space cloud computing capability. So kind of like a jack of all trades in-orbit vehicle that could help you refuel, move to different orbits, and all the rest. Blue Ring addresses two of the most difficult challenges in spaceflight today: growing space infrastructure and increasing mobility on orbit. We are offering customers the ability to easily access and maneuver through a variety of orbits cost efficiently while having access to critical data to ensure a successful mission. So personally, the way I think about it, New Glenn is extremely late right now. They have their lunar lander. They have several other little projects on the go. Now they're unveiling, I suppose, this new multi-orbit space mobility platform. I think just focus on New Glenn. It's the enabler. It's what you need to launch your lunar lander. You'd probably need it to launch this multi-orbit space mobility platform and all the rest. There's been so many delays around New Glenn. I'd really like to see them just focus down on that and get it launching. But, I guess they do have the funding from Jeff Bezos to go after all these different markets. So that's it for today. I hope if you did find this coverage interesting and useful, you will hit that subscribe button. Again, very helpful for the channel. Let me know down in the comments below which of these stories you thought was the most interesting and your thoughts on pretty much any of them, and I'll check out what you think in the comments below. Happy Friday once again. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.